Hey everyone, my name is Shawn and welcome to the third and final demo for my project adding intelligent code and documentation linking to review mode. In part 1, I showed you the initial mockup of the code information info box that pops up when hovering over code references in the diff viewer. In part 2, I demonstrated the Pigment's Lexer code inspector backend, which parses code information when rendering a diff file. Today, we'll be bringing it all together and we'll see information retrieved from the report servers and displayed in the info boxes. To tie it all together, I added the first code reference backend, the inspector data code reference backend. The code reference backends query different services to try and retrieve information on the piece of code being hovered over. The inspector data code reference backend queries the information cached from the Pigment's Lexer code inspector. So let's go through some examples. If we come down to the code reference backends.py file, and we see that there's been documentation added to the code reference backend class. If we go to a reference to that class, we can see in the old version, there's no documentation found. But in the new version, there's the same information with the new documentation. Since we're querying information from the Pigment's Lexer code inspector, we can only get information on code that has been uploaded to the review. So if I try and hover over a function or class that is not contained in the review, like cache memorize, we'll see that there's no definition found. However, we are able to link information between files in the same review. So for example, if I go to the code inspector backends.py file, I can see that there's documentation that's been removed from the code inspector backend class. If we scroll down to a different file and hover over a reference to the code inspector backend, we can see that the old version has the documentation for the associated file, code inspector backends.py, and in the new file, there's no documentation found. This also works for functions in the diff viewer. So for example, if we look at parse documentation, there's a small change that was made to the doc string. And to note, in the old file, it's defined on line 130, and in the new file, it's defined on line 135. So if we hover over to here, we see 130 with the dash in the doc string. And if we hover it in the new file, we see that it's defined on line 135 without the dash in the doc string. So this is just a start for this feature. There's a lot more work to be done, like adding additional code inspector backends and code reference backends. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series of demo videos, and once again, thanks for watching.